Okay, we're going. It's live. Okay.
Sometimes I can read perfectly, sometimes I can't.
Man.
Good afternoon and welcome to the third of our 4 sessions on fundamentals of, this is the third of 4. So we have one more to go. Third of 4 sessions on the vision under the tree, fundamentals of Buddhist meditation. For the last 2 Sundays, we have been, I feel as if we've been on a journey of exploration in the landscapes of the heart and mind under the very able leadership of our resident teacher, Bhaja Master Dr. Han Lai. And I'm delighted to see people come out again today, in spite of the heat and in spite of the traffic. So I'm very glad you're here to be among such excellent fellow travelers and fellow explorers. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lai. Thank you again for coming.
May I make an announcement?
Yes.
Some of you may know we're having an event in October, which will be a celebration of our 5 years. We've actually had the doors open 5 years and we're doing very well. So we are celebrating that with a sand mandala. It will be September 30th through October the 8th. And as of now, we have many volunteers, but we need some more volunteers. So if you're interested at all in getting involved in that event, it should be really fun. And it also is just a delight to watch the sand mandala being constructed. So if you're interested and are willing to help us, see me after this and I'll get your information and we'll see where we go from there. And I like for people to do what they like to do, not want to do. So I won't be assigning anything. So you can get on board in whatever way you like. So thank you very much and I'll look forward to talking.
What were those dates again?
September 30th, October the 8th, that 8 days.
Okay.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, welcome back. So let's start with, if you have been here the last couple of times, you will remember the basic kind of sitting that we've been doing, but I'll still go through with a guided meditation. So we'll start in this way. So what you want to do is just settle into a comfortable posture. Generally, if you are sitting on the floor, you want to make sure that you are in a position where you're balanced. In terms of the cushion, think of the cushion as not so much, you don't want to sit like this to the end of the cushion. Yeah? If your back tailbone is kind of falling off the cushion in the back, that's causing strain to your back. This cushion should really just to prop up kind of your tailbone. Yeah? And thinking in terms of almost like a tripod, so that your weight is distributed between the right, left, and the back. So there's a lot more that can be said about positions, but you should just sort of find a position that's comfortable and balanced. You're sitting on the chairs or sitting on the pews. You, generally speaking, they say you want both your feet to be stable, flat on the ground. And then you check your back. Some people find that the position on the pews in particular, because the way in which it kind of slants downwards towards the back, it might, put some stress on your back. So you might want to consider even like sitting, almost on the edge of the pew. Again, experiment and see what works for you. So then both your hands, again, in the same principle, you don't want them to be lopsided. So you could put them simply on your knees, or you could hold them in what's known as the meditation posture. So whatever is comfortable, just be relaxed. As far as your eyes, you can keep them closed, or you can keep them slightly open. If they're slightly open, you can let your gaze fall into the space that is about 2 to 2.5 feet in front of you. But just let the gaze kind of fall onto that space rather than focusing on a particular feature of what's in front of you. Simply let your eyes rest in that way. At your own pace, mentally scan your body to see if there is any kind of tension or extra pressure that is felt there. And perhaps it's because you are leaning in that direction, or perhaps your pants is a little bit kind of tight over there. So do whatever is necessary to kind of relieve that stress, relieve that pressure, until you find kind of an optimal sitting position. So feel free to kind of move the body around. Think of the body almost like a pendulum that is swinging a little bit, moving a little bit, until it settles into a place of quiet and relaxed openness. The openness will be a lot easier if you slightly hold your shoulders to the back, almost putting a little bit of tension, at least at the beginning. That will help kind of facilitate this feeling of openness. And the other aspect is to pull up your spine, almost imagining like you're going upwards into the sky. Again, at the beginning, there's some degree of tension, and then let it slowly settle back down. And remain in this space of alert openness. Feel your spine holding up heaven and earth. Feel your heart opening outwards. There is some kind of stimulus that makes you want to shift physically. It's okay to shift. But before you shift, note that stimulus. Note that thought that says, move. Note the thought that says, maybe this way is more comfortable. Maybe that way is more comfortable. Note that first, and then make the shift. If there's an itch, note that first before you scratch. Then make a resolve, make a decision that whatever that is going to be arising, important or not, you say to it later. You're not dismissing the importance of whatever pops up, but just say later. Whether it's important or trivial, just say later. Now let your awareness spread throughout your body. Feel being in the body. Pay attention to whatever sensation that seems to be arising in any part of your body. Then direct your awareness there and gently watch that sensation. As that sensation fades, just relax your awareness again throughout your body until another sensation arises in a distinct way. Then let your awareness go there. And after a while, when the sensation ceases, just remain and let your awareness pervade your entire body. And remain in this state of alert openness. Now pull your awareness that is pervading your entire body. When you're ready, at your own pace, bring your awareness to right where breath enters your nose. And focus on the sensation of breath entering and exiting your body. Sometimes that sensation is obvious and coarse, and other times subtle. Just Just pay attention. Sometimes travel with the breath into your body and let your awareness feel your lungs filling up. And the emptying of the lungs and the sensations that accompany both of those. There's really nothing to do, nothing to achieve, nothing to attain. Simply stay with the present. Simply stay with one breath. Simply stay with the inhalation, and then stay with the exhalation. Although anchoring your awareness now on your breath, you should also let awareness be present throughout the body. An awareness of being in space. Just as your body occupies physical space, your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations are all taking place within a particular kind of space. Not physical space, but nonetheless space. And that is the space of awareness. That awareness is constantly present, but it has no content to itself. Because of that awareness, thoughts take place, feelings are felt, experiences are had, and sensations take place. Any observations that you care to share?
The deeper you go, the calmer you get.
Mm-hmm. The deeper you go, the calmer you get. That's good.
Or the sleepier.
There's space over here too. Oh, the sleepier. So last week I suggested, right, the sleepiness. Well, either that worked really well or that was a complete failure. Not that there is, success or failure to measure with, but either you felt that that worked really well, or you felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know what just happened. I don't have anything to say.
found that it's a lot harder to want to pay attention to where my body's at because I don't feel very well today compared to like last week and week before. Like sinking into the feeling on your skin, the space around you, and everything. Like when you have an ache, it's like, oh, I definitely want that thought, the thought of like something else. Or to pay more attention to that, and it's harder to be like, because like that's more interesting than the ow.
From Randy, that it was hard to get into the meditation today.
And why? So why is it seemingly sometimes easy, sometimes hard, sometimes interesting, sometimes boring?
It's life.
It's life.
It depends on the crisis of the day. If there's a lot going on, it's harder, I think, to keep coming back if you've got something over here that keeps turning.
Yeah, so if something else keeps coming, that's when you have to, right? You have to apply those sort of instructions, that you have to experiment to gain some confidence that they work. So which is to say then that, of course, when the crisis level goes up to a certain point, that's not a good time to start learning how to use a tool, so that you prepare for rainy days, so to say, by familiarizing with the tools, and more importantly, personally gaining confidence that that tool is efficient for, right, doing this particular job, and this other tool is especially efficient for doing this other job. Yeah, so gaining that direct experience and confidence in some ways is where the real challenge is. As a culture, I think we are so, we give so much weight on kind of intellectually understanding something and thinking, okay, now it will work. And so I've said before that you can't think yourself to the Buddha state, the state of being awake and free from confusion. You can't think your way there. Which is, of course, not to say that thinking, reasoning, contemplation, consideration don't have a role to play. But they are not the answer to all of it. So we are constantly hoping to find, another set of information or knowledge that will somehow change everything for us. But that's usually not where the problem is. The problem is that we don't have time, or we think we don't have time, or we don't want to, or we get distracted, right, from learning the different tools and applying them and gaining some personal confidence that that tool works. So one of the tools right, is, for example, as simple as later. Right? We talked about that a little bit. Later, kind of saying kind of firmly, but without anger, without annoyance, but with some resolve, some firmness to whatever it is you say, okay, now I'm going to sit for 10 minutes. So whatever important things that I need to attend to, whatever important great ideas that is going to pop up now, that one idea that is going to get everybody in this room to volunteer for, Judy's project, that idea might pop up later. Or some mathematical equation that you have been working with, that pops up later. Yeah, or the thought going to, oh, dinner would be really good if I make this or that later. Because this is your 10 minutes. So that's a tool that you have to apply and just say later. As long as you're applying those tools, it doesn't matter. See, here is where we kind of get trapped or confused. We think that, hey, if I apply the tools, last week when I applied this particular tool, it worked really well. And it was easy to be blissful. Today, I applied the tools. It seemed like an uphill battle. And you think, oh, today's sit is not as good as last week sit. There is where we have been tricked. Because what it is like, I'm learning another way in which this tool can operate, and I need to, like it's sort of like you're going through different terrains, this mental terrain, and learning how well the tool works when. And so, not, like I said, we should not bring in terms like, think in terms of like failures and successes, but nonetheless, that's always back there, right? Culturally, failure or success, success getting a medal. Now, of course, let's just give everyone a medal, and because the medal makers, make money. That's the bottom line, it seems, Then you feel like you're also a good person if you give everyone a medal. But, the key thing is to apply the tools. Because in doing that, you begin to gain familiarity with the tools, and then you gain confidence. And that confidence is really important. Yeah? Otherwise, all of this is just like fancy rumors. I mean, you know how many pages of fancy rumors you have already accumulated. Perhaps you even have a very sophisticated filing system, all filed nicely away. And you say, I know, when I need that, I know exactly where to find it. But then, even if you succeed in finding it, you don't know what to do with it. So the important thing of kind of in terms of establishing a habit of paying attention to our inner lives, of training the mind, chitta bhavana, the development of the mind, is that the first thing is that we need to put aside all those kind of TV ideas of what meditation is. Misty, right? Put that aside. Very calm, very peaceful. Sometimes that turns up, sometimes that does not turn up. Then keep applying the different tools.
That sounds more like a science than something spiritual.
How so?
Just being able to apply a certain regime, certain ways of looking at things, which, I don't object to. It's definitely more scientific than, most religions. You're adoring something, praising something.
Yeah, I think, as we were talking, discussing last 2 weeks, with this core kind of vision, core method, I don't know if definitely isn't religious the way we normally think of religion, with the caveat that religion department people don't get to join this conversation. I mean, ordinary people's conception of religion, it doesn't quite resemble that. And sometimes I even say it doesn't even quite resemble what ordinary people talk about as spiritual either. Because spiritual pertains to the spirit, and the spirit is really mysterious, right? Spirit is really kind of, you can't put your hands on it. Not that you can put your hands on this, right? But actually the Buddha never really found much value in using the language of spirit. His contemporaries of the same ilk, which some people thought they were just homeless bums, fancy word for ascetics, or ascetics are the fancy words for homeless bums. Many of them found the language of spirit and all that aggregates around this language of spirit to be useful. Contrary to that position, the Buddha avoided the language of spirit. And the language of spirit in the Buddha's own time is the Sanskrit word Atman. Sort of like the divine self, the indwelling self, all of that. The Buddha actually didn't care for that set of vocabularies and all the issues that come surrounding that particular vocabulary and the commitments that come with that, actually. Instead, he said, what we can account for when you look at, when you ask, what the heck is this? Right? What's going on here? Well, he said, I think we can all in this room agree there are physical processes going on. There are mental, emotional processes going on. And to him, that's sufficient. So he never went beyond the language of what can. So in a way, you could say he was sort of an empiricist. I said, what can you empirically kind of access? Well, bodily processes, physical processes, and mental emotional processes. Of the two, he gave more attention to mental emotional processes. So the Buddhist physical sciences didn't really develop the way in which Western physical sciences kind of developed. But mental emotional, that area, the Buddhist inner sciences kind of flourished. And interestingly, by kind of leaving aside the language of spirit, because spirit, the language of spirit involves kind of very too obscure, maybe requires a level of faith, a certain set of commitments that the Buddha found to be not helpful in his own experience. And of course, this is just being offered to you, and not so much to say, therefore, this is the truth with a capital T, and anything that doesn't agree with it, obviously, hint, hint, is wrong. But I think if we pay attention to how each tradition kind of presents its own kind of insight into the human experience, we can gain a lot from all the various traditions. Especially now we live in a world where we are not separated, physically, and information is not separated from valley to valley and village to village, right? So there is a variety of human experiences that I think we could learn from and see what is useful and helpful to ourselves. So one of the things about the Buddha's approach is that, again, some of you might be surprised to hear this, but I think many of you have already heard me say this. I would even argue that Buddha's core vision is only peripherally, secondarily concerned with kind of notions of capital T truths. The truth out there that you can have to kind of navigate your way until you find it. But rather, what he taught are more important to pay attention. Not to say that, I think the Buddha did have, right, this capital T truth that he realized. But that's not as important to spend time pondering upon. More important is the strategies that he gave, the tools that he gave for us to work with those tools. And by working with those tools, if we come face to face with the same capital T truth that he came face to face with, then good for you. Yeah, but it doesn't entail, right, signing up to that truth claim in ways that I think maybe other religious traditions might kind of require that. I don't know. It's also based on your experience of that. In this case, I think it's better to kind of approach what the Buddha taught as these strategies. So among these strategies, what I want to introduce today is what Buddhists call the 3 characteristics of existence as we know it. Existence as we know it, meaning kind of confused existence, right? An existence where we are constantly in a state of becoming. We always feel like we have not yet arrived. And this becoming, this constant process of becoming, is driven by this thirst, by this thirst, by this force that says, you know, do something, be something, be something, be something. And then that turns into bumper stickers, right? I would rather be, I would rather be, I would rather be, and so on and so forth. So this kind of existence, which is to varying degrees, we kind of live like that. Some days stronger than other days, but it's always underlying. When we don't have something, we want something. When we have something, we want something else. So why go to, you know, a place where there's only, you know, 3 things available for you to eat when you can go to one with 43? Choices, good. And so this constant way of being in the world that is not really being in the world, but driven by this endless, tiresome process of becoming. So that's really what Buddhists mean, what the Buddha meant by when it says, if you're familiar with these words, samsara, the cycle. The cycle that is like a dog chasing its own tail and that can never quite get it. So the cycle. So there are 3 characteristics to this cycle. The first one is the Indian word dukkha. Dukkha. Dukkha is often translated as suffering. But it has a range of meanings that is unsatisfactory, unsatisfactoriness, suffering, dis-ease, and stress. Stress, trauma, that whole gamut of feelings. The etymology of this, of dukkha, ka is space. Duk is like unhappy. To be in an unhappy space. To occupy an uncomfortable space. That's dukkha. So, first characteristic of this constant process of becoming is that it's dukkha. Second is inconstancy or impermanence or change. All composite things, all composite phenomena is inconstant, unstable, unreliable, unpredictable, unsure, not certain. And the third is that all of these, and in a way, most important, or actually the good news, is that all experiences is not self. Not self.
explain that one a little bit more.
Sure.
All experience is not self.
All experiences is not self.
All experiences.
Everything that we experience
Mhm.
is not self. Yeah. So we'll get to that. On the surface, these three characteristics seem rather, how would you say, unrelated? Or what is the impression, when you say these three things? Stress, inconstant, not self. It's like, ugh. Right? Not words that you hear a lot at parties. So on the surface level, it seems like, oh, that is just so unpleasant. Why do you have to talk about these things? But I actually said that if we begin to notice all the experiences that we're having from moment to moment, we can actually see and use these three and see these three characteristics clearly. And interestingly, he says, when you see these three characteristics clearly, you become free. It's very.
Accept them.
Well, first have to see them,
Mm.
right? First have to train how to even recognize them.
Mm.
Yes, then of course, acceptance in a way, but not like, sometimes, especially like in religious matters, right? When we think about acceptance, I don't know, we have an image of like,
Not like giving up.
Sure. But here it says that if you actually pay skillful attention to how all our experiences is characterized by one or a combination of these three, when you actually have the ability to see that, you become free. So of the three, perhaps the hardest is the first one. What do you mean if I can see that it's stressful, then I become free? You're like, I see that all the time. I'm nowhere close to, being relieved of stress, right? Again, culturally, we love stress because it means we are hardworking Americans when we are stressed. If you don't look like you're stressed, maybe they won't tenure you. If you don't look like you're stressed, maybe they won't promote you. If you don't look like you're stressed, maybe the donations will not come. So you have to look like you're stressed. And you're like, and so what do you mean? Buddha says, if you understand that all your experiences to varying degrees is characterized by dukkha, stuck in unhappy space. It's an unhappy place, uncomfortable place. So how can that ever be liberating? How can that be liberating? Can you think of how that might be liberating?
Because you don't waste your time pursuing solutions.
Yeah, you don't. So one consequence of that is you don't fight, right? Hopeless fights. Yeah, you're like, well, it's what's happening now, pain. And especially, in the times that we live in, I don't need, Like it's not my job here to teach you what to do to overcome that pain. Because there are a lot of people with a lot of interest out there to sell you something to overcome that pain. So we're quite equipped in dealing with that. But where this can help is to say, in the midst of you trying to do whatever it is to overcome whatever pain you're feeling, it is also strategically intelligent to understand that pain is a fact of having a body. Whether it's intelligent design or unintelligent design, it's part of this system. It's only when we think, right, that everything has to be satisfying, pleasing, pleasant, theme song is playing, everything I do has to be meaningful, then we cannot accept. We cannot, because we have this other expectation. And definitely, you can walk into a bookstore, there's at least one shelf of books that they're trying to sell you that says, oh yeah, you can be happy at all times.
But you can.
Hmm?
You can be happy at all times. You have to
Yeah.
work at it.
Depends on what you think. And this happiness that we're talking about here accepts dukkha as part of that. Which is, how do you find happiness when dukkha turns up? It's easy to have happiness when dukkha is not in the picture. Or maybe not so much happiness, but freedom. That's the predominant, actually. Of course, happiness is in the Buddhist, kind of promise of when you do the following, you'll be happy. But more fundamental than this notion of happiness is the notion of freedom.
Kind of makes me think, I'm trying to think of examples of emergency workers and how they're used to seeing suffering all the time and they do it every day. And they're not freaking out if they're good at their jobs, like that they've accepted that what happened is the person got shot and now we have to do the things that revolve around that. And they're not just putting all their attention on that person shouldn't have been shot, that person shouldn't have been shot, that person shouldn't have been shot.
Yes.
The way that us who are less used to seeing suffering totally fixate on that it shouldn't be like this.
Yes. The shock of how could this happen? Yeah.
Or saying no to the present.
Right, saying no to the present. And so when we kind of understand dukkha is part of this package deal, then we won't be dragged around by the experience of dukkha. And there's some space. There is a buffer, so to say. So it's a noble, it's a good strategy to kind of say, yeah, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. And in a way, actually, it then from there, it goes more. The Buddha has more to say. It says, but this experience of dukkha is to a large degree tied to how rigid we are committed to a set of ideas about I, me, mine. And that dukkha turns up because we have created the causes for experiencing dukkha. So this is where we are talking about sort of this understanding of karma, of cause and effect. Yeah, understanding that whatever we experience is the ripening of past actions.
And actions outside of ourselves too, like other people's actions, the humanity's actions.
In the conventional kind of Buddhist view, it's actions of previous lifetimes. But it's not in the sense of like, therefore you deserve it. You know, good or bad, you know, you deserve it. But rather with an understanding that whatever happens now, there is some degree of that is within a set of decisions that you made consciously now. But it's not completely free because there are things that are kind of conditioned and shaped by events that happened like so long ago. So that even as you try very hard right now and you say, I don't want this, it will still happen. But when it happens, having a view of karma kind of helps us to stop beating ourselves further. To just say, this is past stuff that is ripening now. Then again, it gives some kind of, you know, freedom. So I think the equivalent would be something like, you know, if thinking in terms of multiple past lifetimes is kind of hard, you could think of it in terms of like, well, I don't know why, but circumstances are such that it has happened here, that there's a complex, you know, like involving other people, other things, other situations. But in both cases, if we skillfully use it and see, that's the bottom line. It's like, how do we skillfully use, right, these tools? And so in this course, I want to emphasize is like, it's more important to develop a particular attitude rather than to learn techniques or one technique and say, you know, I'm going to stick to that. But first to develop a particular attitude to all of these techniques, to all of these tools, then to apply the tools. Your first, so like I said, first is to note dukkha. Because in a way of the three characteristics, the most obvious one is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness or stress. And you don't stop there. Because once you know dukkha, right, then oftentimes when we experience dukkha, we think that it's forever. We think it's forever. That's when the next characteristic, which is more subtle, that we need to train to kind of understand. Inconstant, uncertain, unreliable. You just don't know. So you also train to see inconstancy. And so even in the midst of like a very painful kind of emotional experience, if you pay, you know, very close attention, you'll see that there are gaps. There are gaps between those feelings. It's just that when you don't have the ability to kind of look closer, you get overwhelmed by the intensity of that experience. And then you think there's no gap, but the gap is there. And the gap is what I was talking about, just as your body occupies this physical space, your mental, emotional experiences take place within an inner space that we call awareness. And that awareness has no content. It's a quality of mind, the ability to know, the one who knows. So when we train and look at, so whenever dukkha arises in our experience, then we should be able to see that that experience of dukkha is inconstant. And when we're able to see that inconstancy, then a very natural kind of understanding arises that you could, we give the phrase, not self. That means there is no unchanging self that is experiencing this. See, often it's when a very strong emotion, a very strong experience arises that we feel the strongest kind of pain or happiness. Which is not to deny that during those times, this is very strong. But it's not constant. So I've said, Buddha doesn't teach that there is no self. Buddha says that this thing that we call self is constantly making itself. So when we know that it's inconstant, and not just intellectually know, but by training the mind and actually directly seeing that it is dukkha. If it is dukkha, it is inconstant. It is not self. Yes?
Did the Buddha come up with that concept from older Hindu ideas about the concept of the I self, or like some of the...
In contrast to it.
In contrast.
Yeah. Because the word is actually anatman. Atman is like that self. And the Buddha almost, you could say, purposely use an-atman.
What I was maybe referring, I don't know if I'm referring to the same thing, maybe like you hear some like big Indian gurus talk about like there is no I, or something like that.
They're talking about there is no kind of ego, but in their system, instead of ego, there is divine self. Yeah. So what is being contrasted in those systems are these two. So go kind of tune into your divine self, right? And let go of the false self. And there's a lot of power in the practice grounded in that. In this system, all it's saying is, with regards to everything, see how it's not self. Then you might want to go, and so what about the self? Buddha says, I have nothing to say about that.
The process of elimination.
Yeah, he says, I have nothing to say about
Well, I mean, like, if you figure out all the things that are not you, the only thing that's left is
freedom, he says. Yeah, he says you become free.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is freedom not inconstant, or is it?
This freedom is inconstant, yes.
So meaning you get glimpses of it and it goes away, or?
Yes. And it's all momentary.
I have to work yet.
It's all momentary. Yeah, they say even enlightenment is momentary.
You have to work it.
Yeah, right now you have to work at it. But there is a state of freedom, right? Where the causes of bondage are no longer there. So to that degree, we can say that's constant. But of course, on this side of confusion, whatever we say is all just whatever we say. Yeah. So again, kind of almost stubbornly refusing to talk about kind of like the final state, like by elimination, so to say. And so I think the Buddhist tradition is distrustful of kind of saying what the result is, because it's worry that that then becomes another way for us to hang our confusion on. So later Buddhist traditions would use words like Buddha nature, this and that. Yeah. But the original kind of vision, I would say, is such that it says, that which is real is real. And while we are on this side of confusion, whatever we say is necessarily within our realm of dualistic, this, that, here, there. And so there's no need. But even in the early texts, you have expressions like the deathless state. Buddha talked about the deathless state, the state beyond conditions, the state which is unborn, that state which is unproduced, the state which is unconditioned. He says you can reach that. You can reach that. And you reach that by training in recognizing these. You begin by recognizing things that you can recognize: dukkha, inconstancy, and not self. So those three things is what Dharma is. Dharma is a loaded term in Indian vocabulary. In this case, you could say the teachings of the Buddha is Dharma. But Dharma, quite literally, also means the truth, reality. Now, what is it that recognizes the Dharma? Awareness. Awareness. The one who knows, that which knows. And that which knows, another word for that is Buddha. And so we have this phrase, Buddha Dharma. And so it's the Buddha that realizes the Dharma, not you, not me. Notions of you and me are necessarily part of this side of confusion. So most of coming back to the kind of the practice itself, what we are practicing is at the beginning learning how to kind of bring attention, kind of developing the skill of non-distraction. we need to develop the skills for non-distraction, to be able to abide, to let the mind abide in one place, and to develop the ability to kind of say, okay, now just sit quietly here. Or developing the ability effectively to say later. And all of that going, okay, later. And as you develop that ability to abide as you wish, then you can direct that to, that attention can be directed to recognizing dukkha. And once dukkha is recognized, to also see that that's inconstant. And that's inconstant, and that's not self. Not me, not mine. Let's take a few minutes break. And then when we come back, we'll do more of the guided sitting.
Why isn't the state of Buddhahood inconstant?
Yeah.
Stop, right? Start again.
Why isn't the state of Buddhahood inconstant? If everything's inconstant, why is